Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another segment of Youth Perspectives, where we discuss issues that are relevant to the youth today of America. So today we have two very special guests, Dua Syed and Sakina Mirza. Assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Walaikum salam.
So today we're going to discuss a very interesting topic. It's something that, again, all of us can really relate to. And the topic is how to balance life's responsibilities without getting overwhelmed. Because as we all know, especially in today's day and age, we have so many different responsibilities that we have to juggle all at once. So it gets really hard to kind of get it all together, to get a schedule straight, to really keep our sanity because, as we see, unfortunately, the depression and suicide and stress rates are really increasing as the days go by, as the years go by in this society especially. So today we're going to talk about what are some things we can do to really eradicate all these unnecessary things in our schedule and to really get our priorities straight and to balance all the important things in our lives without losing our minds. So first and foremost, we're going to move on to our guests and we're going to ask them as high schoolers, because both of them are juniors in high school, what are some responsibilities you both have to juggle?
It's everything from, doing well in difficult classes to participating in extracurricular activities, but there's also obviously the spiritual aspect, so you want to be active in your community and in family life and, balance all those things.
Yeah, as she said, there's like multiple things that we have to juggle with, like family, like keeping those relationships strong and like maintaining your grades at school, and especially like as you get older, these things get like more important and harder too. So it's really important.
Yeah, definitely. So for example, like every day, like let's like do your day-to-day schedule. What are some things like that you really have to like focus on? What are some things that kind of stress you out sometimes?
Schoolwork, definitely, because if you're taking multiple AP classes, that's usually like high on your priority list. And
yeah, especially since like we are high school students, so that's like our main focus at the current moment in time.
Definitely. And do you ever feel like it's hard to balance all these responsibilities?
Yeah, definitely. Because, you feel like you have everything under control sometimes, but then, at this age especially, we're like learning from our mistakes. So we might, not plan something like right or bite off more than we can chew. But in the end, I think you just have to focus on, what's your main goal. And when you have that straight, then it's easier to prioritize according to that structure.
Definitely. And Sakina?
I agree with what she said, and especially like at this age we're like finding out like things about ourselves, while also like we have to focus so much on different aspects like school and family, so everything just kind of like gets hard and overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
And do you think like why exactly do you think it's so hard to balance all of this?
I think because you want to do the best in everything, right? But that's not really realistic in all situations.
And I think a lot of times, for most people, it's like a lack of proper time management prioritize, like how to prioritize correctly. So that's like a major thing that makes us feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen this, like these are good points that they're making, and I've seen this, with the younger, students as well, because when I was in high school, I wasn't as stressed as these students are right now. So, I see a lot of high schoolers, kind of complaining about how their lives are so hard, and it's just because the world is becoming more competitive. As education is becoming more widespread, we're all becoming more accustomed to like people who are better qualified for jobs, so we always have to add extra things on our resume, have extra curriculars, have volunteering experiences, have internships, and have more on our plate to really prove ourselves in the job market in society. And obviously when they're in high school, I'm in college right now, but I know when I was in high school, definitely I was so stressed because we don't know much about the outside world. We're just we're in this little bubble of high school where we're taught really we're under the close leadership and guidance of our teachers. We're in the close companionship of our peers, and we're not aware of what the outside world has to offer yet. So what we're told is that we have so many things to worry about. We have to really do our best and apply to these colleges, and we have to decide our major at such a young age. Like you have to be 16 and know what you want to do for the rest of your life, and it gets really stressful. And then you get kind of overwhelmed because of all those things. And on top of that, there's so many things like peer pressure, like we mentioned previously in another segment. There's peer pressure, there's balancing social life, there's balancing your home responsibilities, balancing family responsibilities, going to the masjid. There's so many things that people have that really take up all their time. So as high schoolers, especially when you're young and you don't really have the experience to really kind of know how to manage and navigate through all of that, it gets really, really tough. But when I came to college, it's really different, because in college you have a lot more independence to do things. But with that being said, you have a lot more responsibility. There's this misconception that college life is easier, but by all means, it's not necessarily easier. It's just very different. So for those youth who are in high school, you can relate to these two young girls when they're saying they're struggling with AP exams and with all these other things, But, for a college student, if you're in college, then you know what I'm saying, that, college is very different and you have lots of opportunities, but at the same time, a lot more is at stake, because in high school, while your GPA does matter, in college it matters a lot more, because that's what jobs will be looking at. They will be looking at your college GPA. They will be looking at the different organizations you're involved in. They will be looking at the internship experiences, the volunteering experiences. For example, on my resume, I barely have any of the things that I did in high school. Like in high school, I had a resume that could pretty much go on for 5 pages long, which is not recommended to do, but technically I could have a 5-page long resume in high school. But now in college, I took all of that off, because no one really wants to know what you did as a teenager. They want to know what you do in college. So it's a lot more stress, and what you do during high school really prepares you for what you're supposed to do in college. And there's so many responsibilities. For example, I'm part of extracurricular organizations. I'm an officer for organizations. I'm involved in the masjid. We have so many relatives here. I'm balancing my time with them. Whenever there are family gatherings, we have to attend. Even if we have homework and tests, we have to go and we have to attend them and show our face and maintain relationships with family, because Islamically that's what's really important to do. And then obviously at home, there are chores. You gotta help around in the house, in the kitchen, help around, drive your siblings to school. If there's a lot going on, then with your friends always want to be like, hey, let's hang out, you're so busy. And there's so many things that go on top of personal time, and it gets so hard to balance all of that. So in college, it's definitely it's different than high school, but there's a lot of opportunity for a freedom in college, because you can really decide what you want to do. And that's when it gets really scary, because in high school your schedule is more set, 8 till 8:45 you have one class, then another class, then this block. But in college, you choose your professors, you choose your classes, you choose what you want to join, you choose everything, you choose your major, you choose everything. So since you have so many choices, the paradox of choice, I'm sure you've heard of it. If you haven't, searched it up. The paradox of choice, it's basically saying that the more options you have, the less confident you are with the choice that you make, right? Because for example, if you just have 2 options, right, vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream, you'll probably be pretty confident with your choice, right? Okay, I want vanilla or I want chocolate. But if you go to an ice cream store with 40 different flavors, you're going to be standing there trying to taste test everything, and then you're so confused. And even when you finally make a decision, you'll be like, you'll ask your friend, can I just share some of yours, because you're never confident. So that's what the paradox of choice is, that we believe that with choices we have, we believe that we want more choices, but in reality we're less confident when we have more choices. So that's something you have to look out for in college. And that's one thing that I wanted to mention, that just because you have more freedom does not necessarily mean that it's easier. It's just harder in a different way. So just moving on back to your high school experiences, do you have to make any sacrifices in your life by cutting out things from your life to make room for the things that matter, or can you fit everything into your schedule?
I think it mostly depends on the situation, because obviously some certain periods of time are more stressful than others. For example, during exam time, we have a lot going on, and we'll have to sacrifice family events or something, or community events where we'll have to stay home and actually study. But I think on a general basis, if you have proper time management, you should be able to balance everything and make everything fit into your schedule.
Yeah, I think with a little bit of flexibility, you can fit everything in, but at the same time, you shouldn't overburden yourself, because that does more harm than good. Then instead of doing really well in the few important things, you just take on all these different responsibilities, and it's your mind isn't fully into any of them. So I think you should definitely they say pick your battles. Yeah, but at the same time, if you think something is worth doing, that it'll benefit you in the long run, then you should find a way to integrate that into your schedule.
Yeah, those are really good points that you guys made, especially, choosing your battles, because obviously we can't juggle everything. So personally in your life, do you feel like you have to choose, what things are most important to you, like in your life when you are, going through school and your extracurriculars and things like that? Like, do you ever feel like you kind of can't go to a family event or you can't attend a much of the event because of that? So how do you make those choices?
It's really easy to lose focus sometimes, especially when you're bombarded by all these different things. But once you kind of get back on track and you maintain that focus, it's important to look at what's gonna, like how I said, benefit you in the long run. So it might seem like it's more important in some situations to go out with your friends and have some fun time together, but in that choice that you have, it might be better to actually sacrifice that and stay home and study. It really depends on what your end goal is, and you have to pick what things are going to be most beneficial to you at that moment to reach that end goal.
Yeah, and as she's saying about having the end in mind, as juniors in high school, right now everything for us is relating to college and careers, so we really have to focus on building that, because that is our future, and now it's very important for us.
Definitely. I've in high school, and I was in high school, definitely I had to really make sacrifices as well, and in college it only gets harder, because I know, for example, I have a friend who is attending she's a pre-med student, so I barely see her. She's always busy, whenever we're hanging out with friends, she's usually studying for the MCAT, is it?
MCAT, yeah.
The MCAT, and she's just so busy, so stressed, and it's sad to see her that way, but she's so passionate about becoming a doctor, and that's like you said, keeping your eye on the prize. That's what she's doing. So in my own life, definitely, I'm really prioritizing my family over everything else. Whenever there's whenever my relatives invite me, or there's a family gathering, I make sure I attend, while sometimes my siblings or my friends, when they're given that option, they choose to just stay home and study. So personally, what I do, I found that I actually don't have to make sacrifices if I prioritize my time, and if I schedule my time right. Because if you think about it, we have 24 hours in the day, and you spend 7 of them sleeping, so you still have a huge amount of time to literally do whatever you want to do. And especially when you're in college, you can choose your schedule. So in high school, you're 8 hours, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? But in college, for example, I've been going 2 days a week, for the past 2 years. I only go Tuesday and Thursdays, so I have 5 other days where I could just do whatever I want. And obviously, I spend that time with my family. I spend that time doing my homework. I spend that time doing extracurriculars and things like that. So in college, it definitely does get different. But when I was in high school, when I had to do 5 days a week, 7 hours every single day, it became really hard. But I found that if I came home and I did my homework on time, and I know it's so tiring, maybe take a 1 hour break and then do your homework, but sit and finish it on time, because if you procrastinate, it will just build up more and more and more until it becomes too overwhelming, and then you just lose all motivation to do it. So in high school, I would literally look forward to doing my work. I kind of set goals for myself, kind of challenge yourself, make it fun, and be okay, I'm gonna set a goal for myself. If I could finish this much work today, I will treat myself to ice cream, or I will watch an extra episode of my favorite show. So kind of maybe even write down your goals, and then give yourself a prize for it at the end. So that positive reinforcement will actually train your brain to really do homework in a really positive light. Because I don't know if you've heard of it's called classical conditioning.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really interesting. Basically, what classical conditioning is, it's a very lengthy thing to explain, but basically, whenever your school alarm rings in the morning, I'm sure you feel very stressed, right? Because that means you have to get up for school. So pretend that same sound of the alarm, if it rings right now during this session, you're probably going to feel stressed, even if it doesn't mean that you have to get up and go to school. And the reason that is because usually whenever you hear that alarm, your brain associates it with you getting up and going to school, and you immediately feel stressed. So your brain associates that noise with stress. So later in the day, even if it's a weekend and you hear that noise, it'll trigger the stress response in your brain, because that's just what your brain is used to associating that noise with the emotion of stress. So similarly, if you classically condition your brain to look at homework and look at all your responsibilities in a positive light by like treating yourself or doing something good, like giving yourself a day off or rewarding yourself for these things, then your brain will become classically conditioned to actually look at these things in a positive light and say, okay, hey, if I finish this, something good will happen at the end of it. And then your brain will associate doing work with a reward at the end, and that will be a good thing at the end of the day. So that's something I really did in high school a lot. I set a schedule, writing it down. I wrote, like, have a planner. Planners are really important. Have a planner, highlight, have different colored pens, do whatever you have to do. Make sure you write everything down and set days. Plan your week in advance, because it really helps, especially in college. That's what's really important. So that's one advice that I have for high schoolers, and one advice I have for college students on how to really help juggle all of that.
I agree, and I think another really important thing, like how you said that we definitely have a lot of time on our hands, but a lot of that time is consumed in like bad habits. So like scrolling through social media and all those kinds of things. So I think if we like take control of those things and like work on getting rid of them, it's like really beneficial in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, like you said, we have all these bad habits, and I feel like as a society, we are spoiled. We are this entitled, spoiled generation where we are so accustomed to having everything spoon-fed to us that we become so stressed whenever we have to do something on our own. So if you think about it, in the olden days, people didn't have TV and phones and social media and all of those things, so they actually productively spent all their time. And we had a session on social media. We talked about how much of our lives it takes away. So like literally, like if you watch that session, we provided some solutions on the matter. We said maybe reduce your screen time, reduce the time you watch TV, reduce your like technology time so you have more time for other things. And I gave an example a few I think last year I did like a social media cleanse where I just I didn't delete my accounts, but I just deleted the apps off my phone for a month or two, and literally I had so much free time, and I had time to literally sit down and finish all my work, and I got my schedule set straight to the point where I had free time left over. So after I became I came into the habit of following that schedule every single day, then I re-downloaded those apps, reinstalled those apps on my phone, and I could properly use my social media when I was not busy with other things. So that's something that's really great. But coming back to the question, if I had to make any sacrifices, I didn't, because I planned it right. And we have so many hours in the day, and if you're telling me that you literally are busy every single minute of those 24 hours, you're lying, because we have so much free time, we just don't realize it. So know that you have it in you to balance all your responsibilities. It's all mind over matter. Just have the mentality that I can do this, because mentality is more important than anything. So you have the potential to balance everything in your life, and you should not be feeling stressed. And if you are, you have to really look at what exactly you're doing, and maybe you might have to cut off some things that aren't as important as the others to really focus on what matters, and to keep your eye on the prize, as Dua mentioned. So now moving on to the next question. Personally, in your own lives, Dua and Sakina, what are your most important responsibilities and priorities to each of you individually?
As we mentioned before, school extracurriculars, volunteering opportunities. We're looking for more things to volunteer in, to build that resume or college applications to put on there. And right now we're focusing mainly on colleges. We're taking all the classes that we're taking are for that. So right now our main goal is to get into a college and really go towards our career in that sense.
Yeah, and I think it's also building your character as a person. With all these responsibilities, it's easy to lose a sense of identity sometimes. So I think there's that spiritual aspect, and then there's the not the worldly, but the academic aspect. But you have to balance both. You can't really be a complete person with just one.
And also there's a lot of people in getting when they get caught up in all these busy things in their life, they forget self-care. It's such a simple thing, but it's really important, because most of the time we lose all our healthy, we just forget about our health, and it's really important to make sure we take care of ourselves when we're in a time that's really busy.
Yes, definitely. So basically you're saying that for now your most important things are your school life, since you're a student. So is there anything else that you prioritize, or is that pretty much it right now?
I think like I said, also it's character building. So if you think with the perspective of I'm doing everything for the sake of becoming a good person for the imam, and joining his army and being there as a contributive member of society, then basically everything you do, you can turn it into something you can learn from, something that you can use to improve yourself. So yeah, I think, that's, I want to focus on those.
Yeah, that's a really good point, really, to understand that at the end of the day, we are Muslims and that everything we do should be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that really helps us in prioritizing the right things. So for me personally, some of the things that are most important to me in my life are definitely the Islamic aspect, because like we mentioned in the previous session, that namaz is so important, and if we prioritize namaz, then everything else in our life kind of becomes easier, because if we take one step towards Allah, Allah will do wonders to make our lives work better for us. So that's really important to understand, that at the end of the day, we have all these worldly responsibilities, all these materialistic responsibilities, but we should not get so caught up in this worldly life that we forget our Islamic responsibilities, that we forget that we're made for more than just this world, because this world is so superficial. This world is so one dimension. It's so superficial, and it's to us it seems like that's all there is, but we are made for so much more. And that's why Allah tells us to pray 5 times a day, to really ascend spiritually to the heavens, to really focus on our connection with the highest, the most mighty, because we are kind of accustomed to connect with Him on a more spiritual level, and we are not limited to this materialistic world. So to really keep yourself notified of what I'm worth. Never lose sight of your value, because the moment you lose sight of your value, you lose sense of who you are, you lose sense of your priorities, you lose sense of your whole life. And there's a hadith actually I want to mention. I'll pull it up in a few minutes, but there's a hadith on that as well that I will mention. Imam Ali alayhi salam said it. It's very beautiful about losing your value. So that's something that we should keep in mind as well. But again, for me, on top of the Islamic responsibilities, if you have the intention of doing everything for the sake of Allah, then everything becomes easier. For example, as a student, as a college student right now, that is one of my most important priorities, aside from the Islamic aspect, right? In this world today, one of my most important responsibilities is that I'm a student. I have to get good grades, get a good GPA, get a job. So with that, obviously with that in mind, then you have to be a part of extracurricular organizations, take leadership roles, volunteer internships, all that stuff, to really gain experience, build your resume and that stuff. But in Islam, we mentioned again in one session when we talked about, I believe Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, that education is so important, and Islamically, seeking knowledge from the cradle to the grave is so emphasized. So if we do that for the intention of, Islamically it's something that's so good, then it'll be a blessing. And just to know that if you're literally doing your homework for the right intention, you are getting thawab, that's something that's so interesting, then you'll be so much more motivated to do all your work, because you don't get any blessings for watching TV or scrolling through your phone and liking pictures on Instagram, but you can actually get so many blessings for doing your homework, or for spending time with your family, doing the dishes, going and vacuuming the floor without your mom asking you, or saying, hey, should I do if you're a college kid who can drive, hey, can I do groceries for you, can I pick up my little brother instead of you driving all the way. It's really interesting. Or just going to the masjid every now and then, or maintaining relationships with your friends, because Islamically, the social aspect of our lives is very important as well. So for me, that's something that's also very important. And I see a lot of other people struggling with this, that they get so caught up in their, school life that they either neglect their Islamic responsibilities or they neglect their social responsibilities, and they shut themselves out. They don't focus on their family. They barely have any time for their friends, for society, for the Muslim ummah. And I feel to me, that's something that's very important. So I make sure I do all my things at home when I have time, so when the time comes for me to go out and interact with other people, I do have time for that as well. So that's something that I did want to mention. But moving on, that we're so busy, and like I mentioned, as time goes by, we become busier and busier, because it gets more competitive. We have to keep adding more things on our plate to be more competitive in the market. So what are some of the benefits of staying busy?
I think if you're in the right mindset, busyness can definitely be beneficial, because your mind stays active and you're not kind of just sitting there and being lazy and not accomplishing anything. There's a lot of motivation that comes with every accomplishment. Yeah.
And also busy doesn't necessarily just mean schoolwork. Even for example, if you're just doing house chores, not mental work, it really personally, it gives me time to reflect on myself, or even you can even discover talents or hobbies when you're working. And mental work, it obviously improves your state of mind and makes you smarter. So that's the benefits of staying busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of research being done on, for example, people who spend too much time on social media, or people who spend too much time watching TV. Their brain, since you're using it less, your brain loses a bunch of connections, and it's not really, you're not really exercising your mind as much as you should, because like there's that saying, well-known saying that like food is for the body, exercise is for the body, what reading is for the mind, right? There's something that says something like that. Basically, it's saying that your brain is pretty much like, it's not physically like a muscle, but it kind of works in that way, because the more you work your mind, the more you do things like reading or mind exercises, or you spend time focusing on things and your mind is focused on a particular task, the more accustomed your brain becomes to focusing on things for longer periods of time. The more your attention span becomes better, the more your attention sharpens and things like that. So your brain really molds into what you want to shape it into. So if you're busy all the time, your brain literally gains the capability to juggle so many things. And we see this, for example, in the lives of the prophets and the imams. We have prophets who, like, I don't want to mention the stories, there's so many, right? Like prophets who've had kingdoms, like for example, Hazrat Sulaiman, people who had to save the world, like Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, he had to save all the people from the flood, or Prophet Musa, he had to save the whole of Egypt. So it's really interesting how these prophets had to juggle so much, and it's like, who are we to say that, we are so busy, we have so much, because we're just so selfish. We're just focusing on our own lives, while we have these prophets and imams and so many other successful people who aren't even Muslim, so many non-Muslims who manage to not only master their own life, but to literally influence other people and to make a greater change that impacts beyond the circle of their own personal life. So that's something that's so interesting, and I feel like we should take that as an example in our own lives, and we should know that if other people did it time and time again, we see in history so many times people had it in them to really juggle everything together on top of their personal things and really make an impact in society, then who are we to say that we can't do that? Because now more than ever, things are so convenient for us. We have phones and cars and GPSs and dishwashers and washer dryers and things that people had to do by hand. And yet those imams and prophets, they accomplished so much apart from doing all of it, grind their own wheat to cook. We just go to Walmart and buy our own things. We just drive in a car. It's so easy. We are so entitled, like I said, and so spoiled. So we have the privilege of time, and we should never tell ourselves that we're so busy. So that's something that I wanted to mention. And again, just the benefits is that your mind literally molds itself into the way that you want to mold it into. So the more you practice, the more your mind becomes accustomed to, focusing on things. So at first, if you feel overwhelmed, just get your schedule right and keep working on that, and soon your brain will catch up with it. So that's something I did want to mention. There's so many more benefits of staying busy. You could just search it up online. There's so many more benefits, and it's definitely more beneficial than staying lazy, because like I said, numerous studies have proven that if you spend too much time on social media, or too much time on watching TV, or if you spend too much time doing things that don't require your brain to function as much, then you will become lazier. Your brain will lose certain connections, and over time, your brain will literally deteriorate faster, because as you stop making those connections, your brain will think, okay, it's useless, we don't need these connections anymore, and those connections will be lost, and you will end up suffering in the long run.
And I think it also builds your intellectual confidence as a person. If you have more things to do, then it's also a quality of being the follower of the imam. If you think of busyness as synonymous with activity, then looking at it from the right perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of the imam, like I said, I wanted to mention that quote from Imam Ali alayhi salam. He said that he who does not know his own worth is ruined. So I think that's really beautiful, that if you don't know your own worth, you're ruined, because we're meant for so much more than just this materialistic world. So the fact that we have all this time and we have all this technology to make our lives easier, so we don't have to worry about all these things like cooking, cleaning, driving, washing our clothes, making food, all that stuff, that's taken care of with technology and all these easy things. So we have time to not only juggle everything in our lives, but we have time to really make an impact, a positive impact and a positive change, in society as well. So we should never sacrifice our own time to be selfish. We should always be able to put our best foot forward and help other people in their journeys as well, because as a Muslim ummah, we have to really unite and become better as ummah if we want the Imam alayhi salam to come faster. So that's something that's really important, and that's a good benefit of staying busy, that you will always find that you will have time and you will be accustomed to juggling all these things, and then you'll have extra time left over as well. So on the other hand, there are numerous benefits of staying busy and having all these responsibilities, but at the same time, what are the downsides, do you think?
Like spreading yourself too thin, I guess. And
like at times it gets like, sometimes we get like overwhelmed and like extremely stressed out, and obviously that's not ideal for us. Like people like naturally need, they can't stay busy all the time. Like they need to like sometimes just relax. Like I mean, that's why we have like 5 days of school, but we still have 2 days a weekend, right? It's a break for us. So I think that's really necessary. Like we can't always be busy. We need just time for ourselves, like just to relax, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and like it's right, if you spread yourself too thin and if you don't give enough time to like for personal care, it can get overwhelming. So my advice is literally to kind of gradually transition into, you know, staying busy and into juggling all your responsibilities. So first focus on your priorities, and then you can add more things, which we will discuss later. But definitely some of the other downsides are that like your mental health can suffer if you don't know how to properly juggle all these things. Like we have mentioned, you know, like suicide and unfortunately depression and anxiety and stress, they're on the rise now more than ever, because students and just people, even like people who don't go to school anymore, just everyday in life, people who work, even people who don't, even like housewives, they can be depressed as well. Like depression is something that can hit anyone, and it's because we as a society, we did not really learn how to juggle everything and still keep our mental health intact. And that's something that we have to focus on first. So the downsides are like you may suffer mentally, emotionally if you don't know how to juggle everything correctly. And then also you might lose sense of who you are because you feel like you don't have time for your own self. Because as a youth especially, you're at a very vulnerable time where you're still figuring out who you are, what you like, what kind of person you are, you know, what you want in life. So when you're juggling all these things, you don't really have time to reflect on your own self. So it becomes very hard, very overwhelming, you know, and you kind of lose sense of everything. So those are, I think, the two main downsides I can think of, that you kind of lose sense of who you are and you might suffer emotionally. Oh, and also a third one, other people might suffer as well. Because if you're so busy in your own priorities and you don't know how to juggle everything, like people who rely on you, people who are dependent on you for things may suffer as well. For example, if your family relies on you to do certain things but you're too busy for that, they might have to, you know, make ends meet themselves. They might have to sacrifice their own time to make things work since you weren't able to do that for them. Or if a community member depends on you for something. For example, coming on the session, if I was too busy and I said I can't come on the session, they would have to go and find other people to come on. You know, if these girls said I can't come, I'm too busy, I have homework, they would have to go and find other people as well. So other people are always, you know, depending on us. And I mentioned this previously in another session, and I'm going to mention it again, that we always have a circle of influence. So whether you like it or not, there will always be someone looking up to you. There will always be someone dependent on you or relying on you for something. So if we don't have our things down right, then other people might suffer as well. So those are just some of the many downsides of not knowing how to properly, you know, balance everything in life. And now it comes to the real part. You know, we mentioned a lot about, you know, what are the benefits, what are the downsides, but now we're going to mention what can people do to balance their responsibilities without getting overwhelmed? Because at the end of the day, there's only so many things that we can cut out, because there are lots of things that we have to give our time. We have to focus on these things. We can't cut them out. So what can we do? What do you think we can do to really balance everything without, like, you know, becoming depressed, without, you know, making other people sacrifice their time because of us?
I think like the simplest answer that can be given to that is time management and like knowing how to prioritize correctly. Like that's like the most important thing.
Yeah, and also you shouldn't get too like hung up on one thing. Like, you know, everything in moderation. So if you have a ton of different responsibilities, you look at, okay, how much time can I allot to this, to this, to this? Like you said, like planning is a really big part of it. And also, like you said, Azra, we all have the potential to balance all these things. So if we just, you know, put a little extra effort in planning, we'll see the results in having like a more like well-structured day in life.
Definitely. And from experience, these are really good points. And from experience, I want to just literally like challenge all of you, if just even for a week. Well, right now I'm sure all the high schoolers and college students are, you know, going through winter break, so congratulations, you know, a well-deserved break. But when you go back and start the new semester, just my challenge to you is, you know, just at 1 week when you're really busy, just, you know, don't go on social media at all. And if it's hard for you, just uninstall the apps on your phone. So your account is still there. You can go back to it anytime you want, but just temporarily, like take those accounts away, take those apps off your phone, and just notice the change in your life. Because honestly, I didn't realize how much time social media took away from me until I eradicated it from my time, and I had so much time for other things. I was so much more productive. So that's something that's really, really interesting, that technology really takes so much time away from our lives. So maybe cut down on TV, cut down on technology, and really prioritize. So that's the number one thing I would say. The number one thing you can do to balance your responsibilities is really cut out things that don't matter. So self-care is important. Taking out time for your own entertainment and your personal reward, then self-care is important, but everything in its own limit. So if you're spending 3 hours to watch TV every single day, don't tell me that you need those 3 hours for yourself in order to keep your sanity. You could just watch maybe 1 hour, or maybe gradually reduce it to maybe watching 1 hour of TV a day, because you don't need 3 hours of TV to be happy. You can achieve so much more if you just manage your time correctly. So that's one thing. Technology and social media, cut it out as much as you can, and gradually cut it out, right? It's not like tomorrow you just stop, right? Gradually, bit by bit, watch less and less and less until maybe you're just watching an hour, or maybe even half an hour a day, or maybe you skip a few days as well. I don't watch TV every day because I don't have to. And then also have a planner. This really, really helps. Even if you're someone who doesn't like writing things down, I don't care. Try. There are so many online things. There's so many online planners as well. For example, Trello. Trello. I use Trello a lot. It's free. It's just this virtual planner that helps you plan everything. That's really interesting. I use that now too, because I can carry it around with me on my laptop, on my phone, any digital thing I have, I can access it. So you can use that. You can use planners. You can use a notebook. You can use online things. You can have schedules on your phones. Like a planner on your phone as well that reminds you, gives you reminders of all the things that you have set scheduled to do. So there's so many ways, but make sure that you have all your tasks written down or like typed up or somewhere. So when you open your planner or your schedule or your calendar and you see everything at once, it kind of helps you. Because if you kind of keep everything, jammed up in here, you get kind of stressed and overwhelmed. Like, oh my God, I'm going to forget something. I have this, I have that. So when you kind of like dump it all out, and you have it somewhere where you can look at it all at once, you'll feel much better. Then you can kind of organize, okay, I'll do this thing on this day, I'll do this thing on this day, and you can plan it better once you have everything out there. So don't save anything for your mind, even if it's the tiniest thing. Write it down in one place, one central place, so you can easily access it, and then kind of divide your time, and you will find time for everything. If you are eradicating all that time you're spending for technology and all those things. And then lastly, also like Luan mentioned, do everything in moderation, because if for example you want to spend time with your friends, you don't have to go out with your friends every single day or every single weekend in order to maintain friendships with them, right?
Yeah,
Or you don't have to for example, in your family, maybe you don't have to do the dishes every single day. Maybe divide it with your siblings, or just kind of make ends meet. You have to shift people's schedules to kind of match yours. You have to shift your schedule to match theirs, because at the end of the day, it's not just about you. You have to really work together and make sure that you're especially as a family, that all your schedules are working together for the benefit of not only each individual, but the family as a whole. And as a Muslim in society, you're also giving back to the community as well. Mm-hmm. So my number one advice is gradually progress into it. So first have a planner, eradicate all the extra things out, and then all the things that you have to do, prioritize. What should I give the most time to? What should I give the least time to? Like personal time, like 1 hour TV, cool. Not 3 hours. So kind of once you get the priority list down, then you can plan things and schedule things and put things in certain days and time slots and then complete them. Then with that reward system I told you, classically condition your brain to feel happy whenever you finish a task by rewarding yourself. And then also just keep in mind that, there is so much there. You have the circle of influence, and that you have a responsibility to help other people as well. So once you got your personal things down, then you can slowly gradually what's the word, you can shift into helping other people as well, helping your family, helping your friends, helping society, giving time to them as well. And I'll tell you, I can promise you, you will have time for everything, as long as you are prioritizing your things correctly.
And if you go into it with the right intentions as well.
Definitely with the right intentions. Like I said, doing homework with the right intention means you can get blessings, with the intention of seeking knowledge. So that's something as well. So what other advice do you both have for the youth who are struggling, with balancing all their responsibilities?
How we mentioned before, to keep the end goal in mind. I think there's a lot of reassurance from knowing that in the end, you know, all of your efforts will, you know, bear fruits. So, you know, if you just focus on the positives and you go forward with, there's a lot of power in the type of mentality you have, you know, like you might think, you know, I'm so powerless, I'm so overwhelmed, but at the end of the day, you have to draw power from within yourself, from your friends, your family, from Allah. And when you can do that, there's nothing you can't do. You're unstoppable.
Yeah. And like relating to the point you said about organization, that's like, organization can go a very long way when like, and it doesn't even have to be like so organized. Like I'm not too organized myself. Like I do things the way that suits me. Like I don't have to write in different color pens. Like I write in one color and that still benefits me. So you can like personalize it and everything. Like it should help you, you know. So and another thing I wanted to mention, as you previously said about a lot of like youth doing harmful things, getting into harmful practices, because as you know, like when we get older, life gets harder. And I mean, I thought high school was hard, but apparently college is equally as hard, or harder even. So it's really important to like, I guess what I'm trying to say is when we feel that we're overwhelmed, a lot of youth turn to the wrong things to find that escape. That's why it's really important to find like a good alternative. Yes, thank you. Like drawing, and even like reading Quran helps so much. Like turning to your religion is really important when you're feeling stressed.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. Yeah, like turning to your religion is so important, because at the end of the day, everything we do should be for the sake of Allah. And if we find that we're doing things for the right intention, Allah will, you know, will do wonders to make sure that our lives are the best that they can be. So that's something that's really important to always remember, that you are a Muslim first. And when we talk about personal self-care, like we think that like the time I spend for myself is just TV or computer or social media or all these personal hobbies and interests, which is good. Obviously, spend time for that. It's really beneficial to take time for your own self. But a lot of the times we don't think of Islam as something under personal care, you know? And if you think about it, if you just open the page of the Quran and if you read it, you will find like a few verses that just speak out to you. And that's the beauty of the Quran. Whatever you're going through in life, whatever age you are, whatever time it is, whatever situation you're going through, however you're feeling, however close or far you feel from Allah, if you open a page of the Quran and read the translation, you will find at least one verse that speaks out to you in that specific moment in time and space. And that's the beauty of the Quran. It's beyond everything. It just really speaks out to the reader. So maybe for personal care, on top of all those personal things you like to do, like your hobbies, your interests, take out time for religious things too. Because if you take out time, think about it this way, if you take out time for Allah, do you not think Allah will make sure that whatever you do, it turns out successful? Do you not think that Allah will make sure that you are well taken care of? Because name one person who, you know, took out their time to really do things for the sake of Allah and then they suffered. You know, like in the long run, at the end of the day, Allah is the most powerful one of all. He's the one who decides everything. So if your intentions are aligned with what He wants, Allah will obviously be on your side. And what can be better than having Allah on your side? So that's something that's very important. Remember that you are a Muslim and everything should be linked to your religion. And everything is linked to your religion, whether you know it or not, whether you realize it or not. So that's something that's really important. Like, you know, like Sakina mentioned, religion. And one thing that Dua mentioned, I really like, you know, mindset. That mind over matter is so important. We are worth so much more than we realize. So don't let these Western standards or these, you know, current standards of this day and age try to dictate your life for you, you know. If they tell you certain things are your priority, don't believe them. You know as a Muslim what your priorities are. Yes, you know, study well, be a good student. If you have a job, you know, be the best you can be in your occupation, be the best you can be in your social life, with your family, with your friends, have good akhlaq, and at the end of the day, you know, stay close to Allah, have the right intentions. But at the end of the day, if you have all these different responsibilities, you can juggle them without being overwhelmed, without burdening yourself, because if you have the right mindset, if you have the right perspective, you can do wonders. You can do things that you didn't even think possible, like beyond your imagination. So honestly, my advice to you is never underestimate the power of the human mind. Like, never underestimate the power of the human mind. I can just highlight this, bold it, italicize, underline. Like, it's so important. Our mind is meant for so much, and as we train our minds, our minds will increase, and our mind's capacity will increase, our brain's capacity for positivity, for change will increase. And we've seen time and time again with people in the past, people in history, even people who are non-Muslims, like I mentioned before, they have done great things. So we as Muslims, if we have Allah on our side, do we not think we can do even more than what they did as Muslims? So that's something that's really interesting. So always remember who you are. Never forget where you came from. Never forget your end goal, and always keep your priorities straight, and just eliminate all these other extra things in your life, and really keep your eye on the prize. So that's one advice that I have for all of you out there who are watching. And just to end things, do you have any last thoughts or on the matter, or any closing remarks?
I think on the point you mentioned about the Quran, I think that's a really good point, and you should definitely take some time out of your day to read the Quran. But another thing that would really help with that is to read the tafsir with it as a supplement, because a lot of times the language of the Quran is really advanced. Sometimes we're not able to comprehend it in its full meaning and capacity. So if you read the tafsir along with it, you understand this context and you start building these connections in your mind, and it's even more helpful when you know the context of the ayah. So
definitely, that's
read it
important
with tafsir.
As you said about knowing what your priorities are, I think it's really important to really reflect, because as Muslims we have different priorities than what the Western world says, as you mentioned. But also as individuals we have different priorities. My priorities would be different from yours, and I think it's important that we reflect on that and really weigh what's important to us, and what is my end goal, what is my purpose.
Yeah, definitely. Those are beautiful points. And obviously at the end of the day, just know that Allah is with you, and always keep Allah in mind, because at the end of the day, if you have Allah on your side, then anything is possible. And never forget your potential, because you're worth so much more than you can ever imagine. And inshallah, with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we pray to Him for help in these times, He will definitely help us. So that's one last remark I want to give, that if you're ever overwhelmed, ever in your life, no matter for what it is, even if it's for something that you think is small, just pray to Allah, because Allah knows you more than you know your own self. He's closer to you than your jugular veins. So really pray to Allah for every little thing, and Allah will listen to you. He is there. He will provide ease and comfort for you in times when you didn't even think it was possible. So always keep Allah close to you in your life, and you will just see the wonders of what Allah can do for you in your life. So with that being said, I want to thank you all very much for watching today's segment, and inshallah we will see you next time on Youth Perspectives.